Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Craven, and it's great to have you here for another episode in our Unreal Engine 5 no-code VR authoring platform tutorial series. In today's session, we're diving into something exciting, building a custom scenario that brings together all the key skills we've covered so far. If you haven't had a chance to watch the earlier videos, now's a great time to pause and catch up. Everything we're doing today builds on those foundations. In this session, we'll be covering scenario creation, setting up dialogue triggers, movement and rotation settings, enhancing quest mechanics, adjusting UI height, and plenty more along the way. Let's jump in and start creating something awesome. To begin, we'll click on this button up here, the little square at the top. Once you click it, the Scenario Creator interface will pop up. You can move it around, resize it, or dock it wherever works best for you. Personally, I usually keep it off to the side, but for this walkthrough, I'll leave it nice and big, so everything's easy to follow. The first thing you'll want to do is enter a name for your scenario. This is the title your level will use. For mine, I'm going to call it S1_driving_safety. Next, let's look at the environment section. Here, you can choose from a list of ready-made environments. All of these options are stored right in this folder here, so you can easily pick whichever one fits your scenario best. You can use any of these files as your environment. For this example, I'll go with the level we built in the previous episode. Now let's move on to the objectives section. This is where you define the goals of your scenario so the user knows exactly what they're stepping into. Consider questions such as, what are the learning objectives? What tasks should they complete? What actions do you want them to take inside the scenario? These objectives will show up right at the start, and users can revisit them at any time during the tutorial if they need a reminder. I'll go ahead and add mine in now. Alright, I've got that part filled in. Next up is the ambient sound section. This is where you can choose a sound effect to loop in the background throughout your scenario. It's totally optional. You can leave it blank if you'd prefer silence, or if you'd rather add your own audio later. All of the available sounds are stored in the Scenario Creator folder inside the SFX folder. Anything you find there can be used. For this demo, I'll pick the TV sound effect. Once that's set, we can go ahead and hit the next button. This section is where you'll select the dialogue you created earlier. You'll find it in the Narrative folder, under Dialogue. From here, the system will detect any dialogue files you've already set up and make them available for your scenario. I'm going to use the driving safety scenario script for our example. Now let's talk about the dialogue trigger option. If this option is disabled, the dialogue will automatically begin as soon as the user closes the starting objectives we set up on the previous page. If it's enabled, things work a little differently. An invisible sphere will appear, and the player will need to walk into it to trigger the dialogue. I'll show you examples later on, but for now, I'm going to leave it disabled. Next, let's move on to the characters section. Here you can choose which characters you'd like to include in your scene. For this example, I'll add Aiden as my first character and Miles as my second. Technically, you can add as many characters to your scene as you'd like, but just know that performance can take a hit the more you load in. That's especially true if you're layering in facial animations or other visual effects. For this setup, I'm keeping things simple and sticking with 2 metahumans. It keeps the scene smooth and lets me focus on what really matters. Now we've reached the movement settings. This is where you'll find a wide variety of options to customize how movement works in your scenario. Let's go over the different movement options you can choose from. Teleportation lets you point with your controller and instantly jump to that spot. Just aim forward and use the joystick, and you'll appear right where you pointed. Shift works similarly, but instead of appearing instantly, you'll glide smoothly across the environment to your destination. Smooth locomotion gives you full control to walk freely around the environment using your left joystick. You can also choose smooth locomotion plus teleport, which combines both options, allowing you to walk naturally while still having teleport as a backup. Finally, there's flying, which lets you move freely through the air. This one's only recommended for very specific scenarios though, so you'll rarely need it. For this tutorial, I'll go with smooth locomotion. But if you're someone who tends to get motion sickness, I'd recommend sticking with teleport or shift for the most comfortable experience. Now let's take a look at the rotation options. This controls how you turn left and right in the environment. You can set it to snap rotation, which moves you in quick, fixed increments. This is a good choice if you're prone to motion sickness. Or you can go with smooth rotation, which lets you turn gradually and gives a more natural experience. And don't forget, you can always just rotate your head physically. You don't have to rely on the joystick for looking around. For this walkthrough, I'll stick with smooth rotation, along with moving my head physically, since it feels the most immersive to me. Alright, next up are the hand options. For a complete list of available hands, you can check out the technical guide. I'll drop a link to that in the description below. For this tutorial, I'll keep it simple and go with a stylized hand. Let's pick the stylized woman's hand and apply it to both sides. Even though it's labeled right, it actually works for both the left and right hand, so no need to worry about that. Once you're happy with your selection, you're ready to hit Generate Scenario and move forward. Alright, let's go ahead and dock the scenario creator off to the side. Now we've entered our new scenario. You'll see the scenario name we set appears as the level name. This is our scenario, so let's go ahead and save it. We'll be able to find it later in the scenarios folder. Looking around, you'll see our characters, along with a few other elements that are a bit tucked into the walls. I'll drag those out so we can see them more clearly. Here's the character we'll be controlling. Over here is the user interface for our objectives. You don't need to touch anything. It will automatically appear in the player's viewport when it's needed, so we can leave it aside for now. And here it is, our static sound. This will play automatically throughout the scenario. I'm going to lower the volume a bit since it can get quite loud, and then drag it into the environment where I want the sound to come from. For this tutorial, the static noise will come from the TV over here. Perfect! In the Scenario Manager, you can edit things like objectives or movement types, but we don't need to worry about that right now. For now, I'm going to position my characters in the scene the way I want them. Over here, I'll place Aiden to the side and adjust her rotation so she's facing the right direction. Remember, if you select your floor and press P, the nav mesh bounds will appear. The green area you see represents all the places where your NPCs, or even the player, can move. If you don't see this yet, you'll need to create one. Go to Create. Type in nav mesh bounds volume, click it, and then resize it to cover your environment. Alright, I want my player to start in the kitchen, so I'm going to position the camera where I want it. Starting here in this corner. There we go. That looks good. Now we need to set the player's starting point. It looks like we don't have a player start in the scenario yet. To add one, go to Create and type Player Start. If the player start isn't positioned correctly, maybe it's colliding with something or is slightly off, you can just move it around until it's in the right spot. For this scenario, I'll place it right about here, so our player will begin there. Once that's set, go ahead and save your work. At this point, your scenario should be ready to play as everything is set up. I'll go ahead and put on my VR headset. Once your headset is connected, click the VR preview button right there. If it's already selected, you can just start previewing your environment. Here, you'll see your objectives displayed in front of you, and when you hit start, the dialogue begins automatically. Just like that, nice and smooth. Alright, that's everything we need for a basic dialogue-based scenario. You could start playing right away, but I want to expand this a bit and make the quest more interesting. First, I'm going to go into our narrative folder and open the dialogue file. Then I'll return to our scenario and create a new folder called S1 quests. Inside this folder, I'll make 2 quests. For the first quest, I'll go back to narrative and create a new quest, naming it QBP_find_keys, then save it. For the second quest, I'll create QBP_return_to_kitchen and save that as well. Next, I'll open the Find Keys quest. In this quest, the player's objective is to get the car keys before the dad does, as outlined in our script. The dad is about to grab his keys, but the player asks him to complete small tasks to distract him. You can edit the quest ID if you want, but I'll leave it as is for now. You can also update the quest description. For example, get to the car keys before your dad finds them. Now we'll assign a location for the quest. I'll drag off from the quest node and select Go to Location, then input the coordinates where the keys are. In my case, that's the front table. You can place an object in the scene and reference its coordinates here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. The distance tolerance sets how close the player needs to be to the exact coordinates to complete the quest. I'll set it to 100 units. A friendly name for the location. What is the location called? For clarity, I'll name this location Table. By the front door, in the hallway. And then down here, you can give it a description. Once this is set, the quest is ready. Players will need to go to this spot to get the keys before the dad. When they succeed, we'll mark it as success and display a message saying, "Great work finding the keys." Finally, we'll add an event to begin dialogue. This will start a specific dialogue node when the quest is completed. I'll go back, grab the correct node ID, so I'll want it to start on this node, and set it under Start from Node ID. Now when the player reaches the location and completes the quest, the dialogue will automatically play from that node. So remember to compile and save. I am going to start the quest to make the player get the car keys. I'll start by triggering the Begin Quest event, then expand the logic from there. The specific quest I'm using is called QBP_find_keys. So now they will get the quest to go find the keys. Once they get the keys, this dialogue node will trigger. Then we'll want them to go back to the kitchen to speak with Aiden and their dad. So we are going to go and create another quest, and we are essentially going to be doing the same thing here. We're going to give it a description. We're going to want to drag off of this, select Go to Location. Again, we can just get the location by getting an object in the general environment. For example, we can use our player character as a reference, and we can get these coordinates and input them. And then the tolerance will be 400. Our friendly location name for this is just going to be Kitchen. And the description we want to give it is going to go here. And then we will set the quest state to succeed. We are going to want to add an event, and we are going to begin a dialogue. Go back here, and we'll want this dialogue to begin. So I will copy the dialogue node ID and paste that right there. Compile and save. And we will want to go back into our dialogue here and give the new quest. So we'll go Event, Begin Quest, and return to Kitchen. Just want to make sure our dialogue ID is correct, and it is. So they will get a quest to go get keys, the player will have to go get the keys, they will get a new quest to go back to the kitchen, and when they get to the kitchen, the dialogue will continue, and they will be able to go through these dialogue pathways. Now I want to add a bit more life to the scene by animating our characters. There will be a separate video that covers animations in detail, so be sure to check that out if you want to dive deeper. For now, we already have some base animations ready to use. First, I'll focus on Aiden. I've created several poses for her, so I'll delete the version currently in the scene and re-add the new Aiden. I'll adjust her position and move the chair back a bit so she can sit properly, then fine-tune her rotation. That looks good. Now she'll have a subtle animation that makes her feel more alive. Next, I'll do something similar for the dad. I want to animate him to give him a little more movement and life, so I'm going to go into his file here. I'll remove the current dad from the scene and add him back with an animation. This one has him leaning over the counter to make him appear to be handling some rags, which adds movement and gives the environment a more natural, lived-in feel. Okay, I don't want my dad to always be facing away, ignoring the player. To fix that, I'll head back into our driving safety scenario and go to the node that triggers when the player is getting the keys in the front hallway. Double-click the node to create a custom event. Here's a neat trick. We can delete the current dad avatar and spawn in a different version with a new animation. Since this happens in the front hallway, the swap will look completely natural. When this node is triggered, we'll spawn our new dad, and it will look quite normal because we will be in the front hallway and won't be able to see. To do this, first right-click and create a delay node. Then drag off from it and type Get Actor of Class, making sure to select the correct one. Here, BP underscore, Miles underscore nervous, which is the version currently in the environment. Drag off of that and type Destroy Actor. This will remove the current dad from the scene. Next, we'll spawn in the new dad. Drag off and type Spawn Actor from Class, then choose the version you want, in my case, the idle version of BP underscore Miles. Right-click and split struct pin so we can set the coordinates and rotation. To place him correctly, reference an object in the scene for the location. I'll adjust him slightly and plug in the coordinates so he appears naturally in the environment. A quick note, make sure Spawn Ignore Collision is checked. Then compile and save. Now, when we try the scenario again in VR Preview, it should feel more dynamic. The quest is in place and the avatars have a little more movement and life. Everything should look smoother and more engaging. Alright, here's a handy tip. If you don't like the height of the user interface we just looked at on screen, you can easily adjust it. Go to Content and search for WA_narrative or UI, then open it up. Select the bottom component and you'll be able to change both the height and the distance from the player. You can experiment with these values to see what feels right. You'll need to enter and exit play mode to test your changes, but this allows you to fine-tune the UI so it's not too low, too far away, or too close. Play around with it until it feels just right. Here's another cool feature. If you don't want the scenario to start immediately, you can have the player start somewhere else first. Let's go into Scenario Creator, then inside the Environments folder and select the main menu environment. This is a custom environment I've created where users can adjust settings, choose scenarios, and interact with objects to practice grabbing or moving around. For example, they can play with cubes, a ball, and even use the screen to select which scenario to play. If you want to make scenario selection functional, open the GDXR template folder, then navigate to UMG settings menu, widgets, master widget, and look for WBP scenarios. Here, you can choose between Scenario 1 and Scenario 2 for your button. In the event graph, all you need to do is type in the name of your level in the designated location. In my case, I'll put S1 Driving Safety. Then I'll compile, save, and now when you start VR Preview from the main menu, you'll begin here first. From this menu, you can also adjust settings such as movement type, camera height, and hand grabbing options before starting the scenario. Once everything is set up, you can simply click to launch your scenario and jump into the VR experience. Another way to make our scenario feel more alive is by adding dialogue or voiceovers. Once a dialogue node finishes playing its audio, it will automatically move to the next one. Keep in mind, Unreal Engine only supports .wav files. So first, let's create a new folder in our scenario called voiceovers. You can either record your own audio or use a website like 11 Labs to generate AI voices. I'll demonstrate using AI voices from 11 Labs. Go to the Voices tab to preview different options. You can click on Voices to preview them.
Hello there. Allow me to narrate your stories, videos, posts.
Now don't stress, humbug. Everything's gonna work out just fine. Mama's sure of it.
So I like this voice. I'm going to add it to my voices. Next, go to text-to-speech. Paste in the dialogue you want to use from your scenario, select the voice, and hit Generate. After generating the audio, press play to test it.
It's late morning. You're tidying up the kitchen, getting things ready for a small dinner with friends this evening.
And then download it. You will need to convert it to a .wav file. To do that, we'll use a converter like Cloud Converter to convert it from MP3 to WAV. We are going to choose to convert from MP3 to WAV. So we are going to go ahead and select our file from our downloads. Then press Convert. And download that again. There we go. Once you have your WAV file, import it into Unreal by dragging it into the voiceovers folder. It's a good idea to rename it something memorable. So I am going to rename it A1. So I know that's Aiden's first voice line. Then, back in your dialogue graph, select the desired node and assign the audio file to the correct dialogue. Then when your NPC speaks, a voice will play. And that's it. Your scene just got a lot more dynamic. Another thing you might need to do, like I mentioned in a previous video, is rebuild your lighting. Let me quickly show you how. Go to Build, then select Build Lighting Only. You can adjust the lighting quality if you want, but the main thing is to press Build Lighting Only to update your scene. And that's how you craft a custom scenario using my Scenario Creator. Of course, there are lots of ways to enhance this even further. For example, you could use more of the environment, have your dad walk over and sit down to chat about the photo book, or even add the keys into the levels so the player physically picks them up to complete the quest. You could also add more dynamic animations, facial expressions, and other details, but I'll save those for future tutorial videos. For now, this is enough to get you familiar with the Scenario Creator. Go ahead and experiment with what we've covered in the previous tutorials. Create something unique, make it fun, and see what you can come up with. If you need any help, leave a comment below and I'll do my best to assist. In the meantime, let's wrap up this video with a preview of our completed scenario. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
It's late morning. You're tidying up the kitchen, getting things ready for a small dinner with friends this evening. Dad comes into the room looking determined. He grabs a dish towel and starts trying to help, wiping down counters, but missing big spots and knocking over a cup without noticing. You thank him and suggest sitting down for a break, but he brushes you off, saying, "I'm not some old man who needs to rest. I can help sit." He moves to the pantry and starts pulling out ingredients, but you notice he grabs a can of soup instead of tomato sauce and puts frozen veggies in the cupboard instead of the freezer. You also notice Dad seems to struggle with simple steps. He starts putting out plates but keeps stopping mid-action, looking confused about where to place things. When you gently guide him, he gets irritated, saying, "I know how to do this. I've done it my whole life." Let's pause for a moment. Dad clearly wants to be helpful, but right now his efforts are causing more stress and confusion. How will you handle the situation?
I gently give Dad a simple, meaningful task like folding napkins or setting out cutlery, helping him feel useful without getting overwhelmed. "Hey Dad, would you mind folding these napkins for me? It really helps me out and I'd love your help with it."
This is a great approach because it gives Dad a simple, meaningful task he can succeed at, like folding napkins or setting out cutlery. This helps him stay involved without feeling criticized, gives him a sense of purpose, and reduces frustration. Many caregivers find that focusing on what their loved one can do rather than what's going wrong keeps the mood more positive for everyone. You're not alone if you've struggled to find this balance. Supporting dignity while ensuring safety is one of the hardest parts of caregiving. You offer Dad a small task like folding napkins and gently secure the car keys. Dad seems to forget about the keys for a few minutes while he focuses on the task. Over time, he appears to become distracted and mutters about going to the store. Nicely done getting the keys. Dad seems to forget about the keys for a few minutes while he focuses on the task. Over time, he appears to become distracted and mutters about going to the store. You know his license expired last year and he's had several close calls while driving. Lately, he's been getting more confused about directions and signs. Everyday tasks like cooking or organizing seem to leave him more frustrated, and you've seen him get stuck halfway through simple steps before. Still, he believes he's managing just fine. A few minutes later, you hear him mumbling about needing to head to the store because he forgot some things. You hear him rummaging in the kitchen drawer where spare keys are usually kept. What will you do?
Avoid saying anything and hope Dad forgets about driving after a while.
Hoping the issue will go away on its own can be tempting, especially when you're exhausted. But without gentle redirection, your loved one may remain focused on driving, increasing the risk of unsafe situations. Many caregivers feel this exhaustion. It's a normal part of the journey. That's why pairing moments of rest with proactive safety steps is so important.
You stay quiet, hoping Dad will get distracted.
Muttering to himself, "Where are those spare keys? I'll just pop over to the store real quick."
Without gentle redirection, Dad stays focused on driving. Even though you hoped he'd forget, his mind stays on the idea of going out, increasing the risk that he may leave unnoticed or become upset when blocked.
And that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.